Straws and fire. Straws and fire. Straws and fire. Learned in motion, she made music with his flesh. The man sat on his paws, glistening with applause, as all the stars bore witness in darkened galleries. As when a point turns lazily in a spoon, nudging out between bubbles, lust, for an instant, in the warm eddy, piercing her wet with his flash of silver. A girl and her spoon, herself, his element. I'm afraid I can't see myself clear in any mirror now, but shifting dreams. This is how poor Aiden went. Sometimes I'm several, and my choices laugh. The doctor came and punched her with saline, and she swam back to the rest of us. Maybe she'll be tamed by death, a cold bath, a shock and rebirth. And did she gain her audience with God? Yet tomorrow morning will be brisk and bright, ties in her purse, 3 hits bundled tight. Who else can tell me how I should live, sleepwalking through our days, alive and not living? And where's the third way? Down in the garden I change into vegetable me, a squash, a turnip, edibly. Fresh and green and wet my leaves, cabbage for the cleaver. Her he knifes, peculiar worm curling inside my heart. What were my choicest parts? But there's nothing I can do or say committed by my roots to time and place. I'm well aware of my sickness. I'm sick of being well. Be aware, little girl, rose between your thighs. Are you more than the sum of your desired parts? My last dream gave me a terrible fear that I would not live long enough to return. Lonely little boys fill me deep with joy, who innocently fuck, making angels of sluts. Curious love teaches a girl to be anonymous. Curious love teaches a girl to be anonymous. What is this poem all about? So I said before, the Song Wants to Be Light was more later on when we went to Mexico. So this one's back in, I'd done the Parks and Rec, and I got fired from that. So this means I'm going back to Southern California, going back into the cycle of trying to get with that girl who was a drug addict, while I read a bunch of politics and poetry and maybe work insurance with my parents. One of the books I got was Theodore Roth. I think that's who it was. Let me look it up. It's The Notebooks of Theodore Roth. Yep. Straw for the Fire, from The Notebooks of Theodore Roth. And this is something I really liked. I ran into him when I was in college, and I liked his poems. And then I ran across this book in a bookstore, which is his scraps, and me trying to create art and create poetry. And then I get this guy's scraps in progress, and all I have is scraps, so I totally relate to it. And then I like this idea of syntactical interpretation, where you take someone's work and then you just kind of like add to it or make it your own. And so I went through his work and I circled all the stuff I liked. I've been writing in books forever, so one of those anti-authoritarian, like, who are you to tell me what's right? So while you're reading it, you're like crossing stuff out. Don't agree with this, writing notes in the margin, I agree with this. So I circled all the stuff I liked in his work, which are just notes, so his notes became my notes. And then at the very end I put them all together. And so a lot of these are actually his lines, or just his lines slightly twisted. What was exactly his line? I think, I'm well aware of my sickness, I'm sick of being well. I think that was his line, verbatim. And then some of it is stuff that just went with, like, once I put them in order, the notes I liked, then I sort of like just rearranged them and I just filled it out. And then in order to give it a narrative, I took the girl who was addicted to heroin, now for years. You know, I've known her for maybe like 3-4 years now at this point. So I started to see these cycles and trying to understand it. And so that's where the imagery. And so definitely Theodore wasn't thinking that. Theodore was like more upright, just standard, typical poet. I don't know what that means, but it doesn't seem like he had much addiction themes in his work. But with me, I was wondering how to love this girl and what addiction meant to her, and then what love meant to me, what love meant to her, and so that's why this poem is cool. At the height of her addiction, not a couple years ago, but like when she was still trying to get clean, and when I would write her off and be like, you know what, I'm just not interacting with her anymore because she just doesn't want to get clean. And when I had written off the romance, that's just not in the cards. We're definitely not going to do that. So now it's just a friend that I still want to help. And I asked earlier, what is our obligation to our friends? And I'm like, you know what, and so I sent her this poem. And we didn't really talk about it, but she remembers that I sent it to her. So it has something there that she may be related to, and I sent it to another addict. The one that I did heroin with recently for the first time, when I saw her starting that habit, as a little warning sign. So there's something here that girl, the 21, 22-year-old, just this year, she said she liked it too. So there's something here, whether it's polished enough or whether it's enough of my own to actually be a poem, I don't know. But straws and fire. Fire, obviously, being the addiction or the heroin or whatever. Learned in motion, she made music with his flesh. The females in my youth, more experienced than me, whose love I seek. How many guys are they fucking? Who have they fucked? That whole possessive love, when you have to just lay it down and be like, it doesn't even matter. I was with this one girl once, and I asked her how many people she'd been with, and I was like, I'd been with maybe 10, 12 people at the time. And then she was like, oh, you're so cute. And then she was like, she stopped counting after 30, 40. She was like, she said she fucked 30 people the year she got divorced. She got married young, and she said that year that she divorced her husband and actually felt her youth. She was in her 20s, mid-20s. She felt free again. That year she went on to tear, and alone she tripled my number. I was like, these aren't really conversations you can have. So it's not quality over quantity. One of my young friends, he told me in New York, I had a little bit more swag coming into my own, some decent girlfriends and some decent ability to actually go out and feel that inspiration and follow it into a relationship or wherever it takes me. And so I meet this young kid with some swag, and we're talking about girls and stuff we've done. And he's like, oh, Shaz, how many focus. He's like, Shaz, how many girls have you been with? You've been with over 100, right? I'm like, nah, dude. I think I'm I think I did a count recently. It's 35, 36. I think that's a good rule of thumb. Take a lover for every year of life. Obviously you're not having a lot of sex when you're young, when you're a baby and stuff. So maybe in college you catch up. That's having sex, different partner every quarter. And then I don't know. That's a good rule of thumb, I think, in life. I'm 35 and I've had about 35 partners, and I feel happy with that. No, I'm 36, but I think it's around 36. I don't know, that's my rule of thumb. The average before people get married, I think, is 5 to 8. So people are having a lot less sex with a lot less partners than I think pop culture would have us believe. But also, there's some who are having light shares of partners. So this young guy, he was like, oh, Shaz, you've had over 100, right? I've had over 100. I'm like, dude, it took me a while just to even learn how to please a girl. I'm like, you've had over 100 partners? A lot of that's probably bad sex, huh? A lot of girls not coming. And he just kind of laughed, and he was like, yeah. Because it's you could brag to me about how many girls you had sex with, but I've learned how to have sex from my relationships. I didn't learn how to be a good lover from the random encounters. And you can only have so many relationships in your life, the girls who it took a year just to get them comfortable enough where they can have an orgasm. That's where I really started to learn what it's all about myself too. And then also you love deeper, and you have that multi-year relationship, and you learn that there's levels to this shit and this intimacy. And that follows you to, in my 30s, I had not one night stand. It was a client that after I got her the apartment, I knew there was a connection. stopped by with a bottle of wine, ended up staying the night. And it was, for being that one night and nothing more, it was a very good connection. But I think that's because we're both in our 30s and we both had good relationships. So we could draw on that experience and then now put it in the situation. And there's really good communication, really good physical communication and energy. And then also, like, we knew what we wanted from each other. And then there wasn't like any of that, that stuff that, you know, you do when, well, I do when I'm young. I did when I was young. I was putting it on the other person, the insecurities and this and that. And so you learn that. It's like you time in the saddle. And so no, I thought that's a good way to look at it. So that way, I don't think I think I've heard that from other young people too. They feel like this numbers game, you have to get your numbers up. This guy told me that literally. I'm just trying to get my numbers up. It's like you're missing the point. Quality over quantity always. There's a lot of bad sex being had out there, which is okay. But that's why maybe it's just something that us older people, and I mean I'm in my 30s, you know, 40s and 50s, and older than me are probably laughing when I say older, but definitely people in their 20s look at me as like an older person. And at different points in your life, you make love differently, you have sex differently, whatever you scratch that itch differently. So I, having less experience, but wondering about the women with more experience than me. That's what part of this poem is about. And then also wondering about that thing which seems to have my friend caught up, have many other friends in Santa Cruz caught up. When the point turns lazily in the spoon, that's you cooking up your heroin in the spoon. I would find her spoons, find her needles. I would take them because I was heavy-handed in my approach to addiction and my approach to love, and probably in my approach to art too. You learn a little bit more. What did I tell here? So my addict friend who's deciding to voluntarily start a heroin habit, we're gonna try to give her a better option than that in life. But I told her recently. I know when I was younger, I thought I could brute force. Here we go. Well, from what I know about addiction, hating yourself for your habit is one of the struggles. So be easy on yourself. It's not a judgment thing, it's a process. I'm hard on you if I think you don't have perspective. But wanting to get out is the real struggle. Then it's just a process. You'll be fine. If you didn't want to get out, I'd be worried. It's like love. Grasping makes sand pass through your fingers. It requires finesse. Cup your intention. Effort works against you sometimes, as does judgment. I know that when I was younger, I thought I could brute force things that required finesse. Age and time gives technique and patience, and youth tries to make up for both with impetuousness. So compensate your youth with a practice of patience and compassion. Be good to yourself. Forgive yourself. You're one of my favorite people. You'll be fine. So unconditional love and patience is something that's earned through experience in life. Back then I didn't have that, and so I was a little bit of a dick to my friends who probably needed more unconditional love and support. But you learn. Sincerity and honesty, again, gift this wisdom, and that I think that now has been useful in my life. These people stay in my life, and I have these really strong bonds that when I don't have money and I don't have much in terms of material wealth, I have a very deep bank of love and support from these people in my life. But it's something that I've cultivated. And but you know, we didn't start off being the best to each other. So this poem was a little bit about her, trying to relate to her situation, nudging out between bubbles, lust for an instant in the warm eddy, piercing a roet with its flash of silver, like the imagery of like both sex and injecting yourself with heroin. A girl and her spoon, herself his element, personifying the drug as the relationship. Because when you're an addict, your relationship is the drug and everything else just serves that. It is your priority. I'm afraid I can't see myself clear in any mirror now but the shifting dreams. This is how poor Aiden went. Aiden's just a fictitious name. Well, it's a name a friend of mine used when she was a dominatrix, but that's a story for another time. Sometimes I'm several and my choices laugh. Feeling like you're losing grasp on reality. Doctor came and punched her with saline, the overdose. Swam back to the rest of us. Tamed by death, are you tamed by your overdose? She told me that the guys would overdose because they try to do more. It's like a macho thing. Or like they take a break and then they come back and try to do the same that they did before. And she survived because she wouldn't. She kept her ego in check. But she had a long habit, and now she's sober. This is the one about this poem. She's on the straight and narrow. She's like I said before, she's doing really well, and I couldn't be more proud of her. But she saw many people who, I don't know how many, but I know a couple who didn't make it. And she said that she saw that with the guys she knew, that they would take more than they could because it was an ego thing. Did she gain her audience with God? She told me once that she felt like she was talking to God. When she was doing whippets, I didn't like that drug much. It just made my ears ring. I did it with her once. I was like, what's this all about? She's like, don't you feel like you're talking to God? I'm like, I just hear a woo, 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 woo in my ears. I didn't really. So some drugs I'm like, once is enough. And never for methamphetamines. That's, some drugs you don't really need to do. The funny thing about heroin is physically it doesn't really deteriorate you. It's the mental thing and the emotional thing and the psychological thing. But physically, I don't think it's that damaging actually. Yet tomorrow morning will be brisk and bright. Ties in her purse. 3 hits bundled tight. So that's the heroin. Who else can tell me how I should live? One of the problems with addicts is they feel like they're the authority, which they are in their own life. But if you're caught up in the throes of addiction, you don't have much perspective. And sometimes you need someone else, that intervention, to talk some sense into you, or at least give you a pause long enough to get perspective. A forced pause. Sleepwalking through our days, alive and not living, and where's the third way? Sleepwalking through our days is a pretty accurate depiction of the addicts I've seen. Down in the garden, I changed it, and now we relate it back to sex. So now this is like, I'm starting to realize, I guess, in this poem that she doesn't need my horniness, my desire for her to be in a relationship. She needs my, my support for her sobriety. And I'm starting to realize this, I guess, because like from her perspective, how she views males going after her. So as I get more experience with girls and I start to see their side of it. And also, I hung out with my brother who's gay, and you get hit on by guys and you feel like a woman and you feel like an object, and you talk to someone at a gay bar and you think that you made it clear that you're not gay, but it's a thing where like some of these guys like turning straight guys, and there's curious guys who want to be turned, who they aren't comfortable about their sexuality, so they say they're not, but eventually they're hooking up with you by the end of the night. But you try to make it clear that that's not me, and I'm just here to support my brother and to sort of check out his culture and his scene. But still, 2 hours later, a couple beers in, this person's still hitting on you, and you're like, wow, I'm really just an object to this person. Like, there's no friendship here. I thought we had a basis for a connection that wasn't sexual, and it feels rude. And that's when you start to realize sometimes you can only really understand objectification by being the object, by being objectified. And so I tell guys sometimes, I'm like, be heavily hit on aggressively by gay people, and maybe you'll start to see why we have to be softer to women, or just be more sensitive, because I do like the idea of the pursuit and the dance, and I like the concept of going after like that inspiration, but there's a way to do it where you don't make the person feel uncomfortable. That's like the rule number 1 about romance. It's not romantic if anyone feels uncomfortable. So how does the girl feel about the pursuit? Well, she feels like a vegetable. Squash a turnip edibly, fresh and green, and wet my leaves, cabbage for the cleaver. So she's just an object to be devoured, to be cut up and parceled. Her he knifes. Or maybe this is how she feels by the drug. Maybe this is like, my narrator here, the girl who's like writing this journal of scraps. It's scraps because she's nodding in and out of reality. It's like, it starts off with an image of her having sex. The man on his paws glistening with applause, all the stars bore witness in darkened galleries, and she's just shooting up, having sex. Is she having sex for money to shoot up? I don't know. But she's like, this is transactional, this is like objectified. She's being knifed by the guy. She's being knifed by the needle injecting the drug into her. What were my choicest parts? Her innocence. That once you break that seal, once you have that sex for money, or once you have that, that beginning of an addiction, and you feel like, all right, I'm an addict now I'm ruined, that all or nothing, which is kind of how we treat addicts in our society now. I mean, we don't really reach out to them. I feel like there should be more support to them. There should be more needle exchanges. There should be more empathy and love. The judgment in my personal life hasn't helped anyone. And I think that's where society, if we want to really address this opioid epidemic, we have to come with compassion. That some of the other more rational countries in the world are doing to great effect. Nothing I can do or say committed by my roots, but time and place. That's just good imagery. We used it about the vegetables, and now we close with the same imagery. I'm well aware of my sickness. I'm sick of being well. That's more like when she hit me up and said, why are you being a boring person with your 9-to-5 job? It's like, some of these addictions come from just desire to not conform to the current bullshit society. I feel that like we kind of smell that something's amiss. I go off in my crazy adventuring, traveling, start and stop pattern, but some of these other people aren't that creative, or they don't have those options. And so when the drugs come into their life, they're like, all right, well, I don't like the wisdom of the given culture and the given society. Let's see what this wisdom's all about, not realizing what they're signing up for. Be aware, little girl, rose between your thighs, are you more than the sum of your desired parts? I think that's just straight up how it feels to be a woman in this society, hypersexualized society, where sex is currency, and like sexuality. Sexy doesn't mean that. What does sexy mean? Does that mean you want to have sex? Does that mean like attractive? We're just taking the word sex and turning it into a commodity that we then can add it to other things to turn them into commodities. Those are sexy pants, to make the pants more desirable to sell, to make a profit. There's just like sexy, like we already have that word attractive. Is it like a hyperlative of attractive, or I feel like a lot of our social narratives about sex feed into this objectification. My last dream gave me a terrible fear that I would not live long enough to return. That like realization of the game we're playing, and then the very end. It's kind of a reflection on my interactions with her. I won't get her experiences. We don't talk so much about the past. We try to concentrate on her current friendship, and I do talk to her about her current relationships, meet her boyfriends and stuff, and give her my advice, just as a dude, treat her like a sister. But treat her as family. Friends from your childhood become family, because your circle, there's only so many people who stay with you over these 10, 15 years, 20 years, and so those who remain, we should appreciate, and I try to appreciate those in my circle. But back then I was like, how much can I know about what she's doing, and how much, and this is part of, I guess, me understanding to give the autonomy to other sexual experiences. Like, your curiosity does not justify you interrogating someone about their sexual life. Like, I don't have as much experience, she's having more experience, and I also kind of want to be with her, but does that justify me, like when we say like this thing, like you'll find it in any forum online where you like these guys calling girls sluts or whores because they're getting with guys. It's like, it's kind of none of your business. Let the girls, if you care about their safety and their well-being, then provide them comfort and support and positive validation. Your judgment does nothing to them except project your own insecurities. That's something that you have to come to as a man. Anything less is not being a man, is being a scared little boy. Lonely little boys who fill me deep with joy, who innocently fuck, making angels of sluts. And that's why curious love teaches a girl to be anonymous. That's why they withdraw, and my interrogations would just push her further and further away from opening up to me. Because they will, the anonymous girl with no past is always a virgin to the next guy. Whether that's the way they should play the game, or whether they should try to open up and try to be honest about their sexual history with the next guy, and with their addiction history, and create something that has a foundation in truth, is up to them. But you don't change people, and you don't help people through judgment, but through understanding and honest dialogue. And art should be, if art is anything, I said this earlier, art is truth and beauty, honest dialogue, and I think there's a lot of honesty in here, a lot of honest reflection of my emotions. And it's cool because I borrowed the wording and the phrases from this other established poet. So I guess this is like a part of me like proving that I could be a poet. Like, well, I took his house, deconstructed it, and then took that lumber and the joists and like some of the foundation to create my own house. House might not be up to the standards of his house. His house might have been a great work, and mine might just be like a lesser imitation, but it's mine. And it speaks to my own truth, and it speaks to my own experiences. And I've used it for other people going through similar experiences, and they can relate to it, and that's why I like this one. This is, this one is probably both the most personal and the most removed from me, since a lot of the experiences and a lot of the words aren't my own. And yet for some, it's still, it captures ideas, emotions, and times in my life.